It was unexpected that Earth would take part in the Galactic Combat Challenge. The competition was well known throughout the galaxy, renowned for its fierce, high-stakes conflicts in which the most powerful and developed civilizations displayed their Earth's hesitancy was natural, given that its inhabitants were viewed as inferiors, who were hardly significant in other worlds, showcased their advanced technologies and genetically enhanced warriors in intergalactic affairs. Contributions to this cosmic arena were frequently written off as obsolete or unimportant. The Galactic Combat Challenge was a tournament rather than just a competition. Intended to assess fighters' tactics, stamina, and weapon proficiency, the rewards were enormous. Giving the home world of victor control over galactic trade and policies, but the dangers were just as severe. Defeat frequently resulted in surrender to more powerful civilizations, or, in the worst situations, complete annihilation. Even though the stakes were high, Earth's leaders were hesitant to participate since they lacked advanced weapons and fighters capable of the participation of their alien counterparts. Technological and physical superiority appeared to inevitable loss. But as the time to designate a representative drew nearer, the demand on Earth's existence increased. In an galaxy had to make a statement, even if it was a desperate one at the time, because the galaxy was becoming more and more hostile. Representatives from Earth looked at the most unlikely applicant, and their gaze fell on a guy who had lived in obscurity, developing a technique that many people thought was no longer useful for swordsmanship on Earth: firearms and long-range weapons in place of artifacts from the past. Yet this man, known merely as the Sword Master, he had honed his skills over many years, dominated underground combat competitions where victory was decided by skill rather than firepower. And the choice to send he was controversial, and many people questioned whether it was wise to depend on such an unusual combatant. How could a man competing against societies equipped with robotic advancements and plasma weaponry while brandishing a blade? Doubt wasn't exclusive to news of Earth's ambassador sent to Earth across the galaxy prompted mockery. The Sword Master, however, was the last degrading act in Earth's collapse and evidence of its insignificance to other planets. Seeing the issue as a challenge rather than a death sentence, he accepted the post without hesitation. But also as a chance. In contrast to his critics, he adhered to the timeless ideals of martial skill. He maintained that accuracy and flexibility could defeat technology and force, but his confidence wasn't conceit, but the result of years of honing each blow and motion until they were instinctive. When I arrived at the Galactic Combat Challenge venue, the reception was as chilly as I had anticipated. It was a marvel of engineering suspended in space atop a huge man-made platform, a location where the greatest fighters congregated, each bringing the might and pride of the Sword Master stood out amid these civilizations because he lacked shiny armor and weapons that were endowed with. He carried only advanced energy cores and had no sponsors or entourage. In contrast to the others, his blade was a straightforward, unassuming weapon, and the other contestants showed their contempt without hiding it. They publicly made fun of him, with some even placing bets on how easily he would lose to them in the opening round. Was a warrior whose abilities belonged to a bygone period, a holdover from a backward planet, and even the organizers appeared to. Despite the mockery, consider his involvement as a formality and a short diversion before the actual competition started. The Sword Master stayed composed, watching his opponents, researching their strategies, and recognizing their shortcomings while others displayed their technological prowess. He concentrated on getting his. He was aware that staying alive in the competition required more than just physical strength. It required patience, planning, and the capacity to adjust to whatever. Some of the contestants became uneasy due to the Sword Master's quiet confidence. But the majority disregarded him as few began to question whether he was more complex than first appeared because of his unusually masculine manner. He appeared to be resigned to failure and exuded an aura of certainty, as though he knew anything they didn't, but the jeers continued despite this slight change in perspective. As the day of the first round drew near, it caused some people to start to doubt the Sword Master's appearance. Become more difficult to ignore journalists and spectators who were previously uninterested in the U.S. When he refused to participate in interviews, the representative started to notice his poise. Instead of defending his chances or engaging in trash talk, he discussed the art of combat as a however. His utterances were in a global language that went beyond both species and technology. Simple struck a chord with some, which contrasted sharply with others' bluster. When the first round roster was revealed, competitors who boasted about their invincibility attracted. The Sword Master was scheduled to take on one of the tournament's most infamous competitors, a fighter renowned because of their brutality and sophisticated cybernetic improvements. The professionals had the upper hand. predicted that Earth's participation in the competition would terminate quickly, and brutally the battle was constructed as a spectacle, an opportunity to witness an antiquated warrior being destroyed by advanced technology. But the Sword Master didn't share that opinion. He saw every opponent as a riddle to be solved, every challenge as a chance to demonstrate that the fundamental ideas of as the first round approached. He prepared so that swordsmanship could still compete. Silently, oblivious to the commotion around him, the laughter, the doubts, they were all sources of diversion, and by the time the stage was prepared, and the Galaxy audience watched as the Sword Master took the arena floor for his first match. They were anticipating a one-sided battle, but they were unaware that they were going to see the first breach in their assuming a situation that would start to contradict all of their preconceived notions about Earth's fighters and combat techniques. The Earth Sword Master started to undermine the Galaxy's presumptions in the first round. Opponent was a warrior with cyber enhancements, a creation of highly developed engineering from a society known for producing soldiers with almost flawless accuracy and tremendous power. The battle was anticipated to be brief, with the result that was significantly biased against humans instead showed a demonstration of skillful timing and flexibility that left onlookers stunned by the Sword Master's calm and precise movements. Taking advantage of the weaknesses in his opponent's mechanical improvements to turn what appeared to be an insurmountable disadvantage into his triumph, the audience was taken aback by this surprising outcome. Many thought it was a lucky break for an opponent who misjudged his opponent, but the conclusion was the consequence of the Master's lack of celebration or surprise. Disciplined training and a grasp of the principles of combat, his triumph compelled even the most doubtful onlookers to the idea that Earth's fighter might not be as archaic as they had thought, but the true test was still to come. As he moved on to the next round, the competitors' doubts, and there was no denying that the Galaxy has long-standing value technology and genetic fighting soldiers from advanced civilizations were raised, trained, and equipped with engineering as the ultimate tools for warfare. Their Sword Master, on the other hand, was unremarkable. A remnant of the past with a weapon that was thought to be outdated, his ongoing participation in the competition was perceived by many as a curiosity as opposed to a real threat, but there was a growing sense of worry among some observers that his success had been achieved through a different, harder to quantify method rather than by using force or pure luck. A Jai that quantified power and technical achievements and strength in numbers, the Sword Master encountered a novel challenge in the second round from an opponent whose tactic did not rely on. Whether using advanced weapons or brute force, this extraterrestrial warrior was unpredictable. The battle was fought by a beast master who could command a range of genetically modified monsters. Chaotic, intended to overwhelm by the sheer force of the monsters under the enemy's control and their vast numbers. Anticipated that the Sword Master's normal strategies would not work against such an unusual danger. What transpired was a lesson in flexibility. The Sword Master's strategy for the battle was to impose order rather than confront turmoil with chaos. Order by precision, his strikes were purposeful and his movements were premeditated. Instead of becoming alarmed by the animals' onslaught, he studied their routines and took advantage of their predicted. However, the animals were defeated one by one, and the battle ended with the quiet rather than a grand display of strength. Efficiency that had started to characterize his approach, and by the time the final beast was defeated, the arena was quiet. What had, with perseverance and concentration, what had appeared to be an insurmountable obstacle had been broken down, and this second victory started to change perceptions more notably. But many people continued to hold into the idea that the Sword Master's achievement was a result of a developing many competitors, and spectators began to realize how skilled he was. He wasn't merely surviving. His triumphs weren't merely about beating opponents. They were also about ding scenarios intended to destroy inferior fighters. About destroying the presumptions that support the hierarchy of the competition. The galactic media that had originally disregarded Earth's delegates started to pay attention. And the tournament's coverage changed to include in-depth study of commentators analyzed the Sword Master's fighting style in an effort to comprehend how a warrior with only a blade might defeat adversaries who stood for the pinnacle of biological and technological progress. While some experts attributed his success to chance or his opponent's lack of preparation, others started to look more closely. They saw his emphasis on timing while delving into the theory underlying his combat strategy, precision, and the capacity to use his opponent's advantages into disadvantages as the competition went on. The impact of Master's presence spread beyond the arena. And competitors who had previously written him off began to regard him with a mixture of admiration and fatigue because his strategy for fighting was unorthodox given the competition. And his unpredictable nature made him a deadly foe, as many of the competitors depended on their technologies or improvements to control the Swordmaster's triumphs, showed the effectiveness of self-control, and the spectators and contestants weren't the only ones who benefited from this change in skill. Also started to alter their perception of Earth fighters. What had initially been derision and disdain started to give way to the Swordmaster's successes were not met with interest or, occasionally, appreciation. His success came from a combination of brains and talent, not just overwhelming force. Master's sword served as a reminder that fighting was as much about the mind as it was about the body or the weapons. The tournament storyline was also impacted by victories. The Galactic Combat Challenge had long been a showcase for the most developed societies in the galaxy, serving as a platform for genetic and technical dominance. Although they were hailed as Earth fighters, perfection stood for something else. His achievement called into question the competition's fundamental principles, compelling both competitors and spectators to reevaluate what it meant to be a great warrior. The Swordmaster's performance changed dramatically in the second round, was seen, but it also highlighted the difficulties that were ahead. His triumphs had garnered attention, and with that attention came scrutiny. His rivals in the next rounds would be paying more attention to his bouts and analyzing his strategies and planning defenses. The Swordmaster, however, remained unfazed and concentrated on the battle in front of him, not on other people's perspectives or the difficulties that awaited him as he got ready for the Swordmaster's strategy stayed the same for the next round of the competition. He didn't use any outside resources or improvements, nor did he try to use bluster to scare his opponents. Instead, he kept depending on the values that had led him along the way: self-control, discipline, flexibility, and faith in the using talent over force. The Swordmaster concentrated on what he could do, while the galaxy kept debating his prospects. Take charge of the upcoming battle to demonstrate that Earth's tactics were anything but outdated. As the competition progressed, the opponent's ability and plan grew increasingly formidable. Galactic warfare veterans made up the remaining contestants, each of whom represented a civilization that had developed their fighting skills over millennia to become Earth Swordmasters. But the difficulties go beyond simple survival. He was now up against the greatest the galaxy had to offer, and every fight required him to use his discipline, inventiveness, and flexibility during this stage of the competition. The Swordmaster's concentration switched from physical strength to strategy and mental clarity when he faced combatants who combined these fighters, who had studied his prior fights, combined physical strength with sophisticated tactical planning in an effort to take advantage of apparent vulnerabilities. But rather than bucking the pressure, the Swordmaster changed his strategy. He didn't depend on one fight style or tactic. He gave him the chance to show that he could think quickly, modify his methods, and react to new challenges. His ability to predict his opponent's moves was one of the most noteworthy components of his success. Swordmaster's training placed a strong emphasis on both physical prowess and keen awareness of his surroundings. Adversaries' combat plans, which resulted in a nearly heart capacity to anticipate assaults before they happened and used precision to defeat opponents who depended on speed. He employed brute force to outthink his opponents by taking advantage of their overreach to create openings. Opponents turned into a distinguishing characteristic of his path, confirming his status as more than just an exception to the rule. The Swordmaster faced his most difficult tasks in the semi-final. However, his first opponent in this phase was a legend. This fighter was a telekinetic warrior with the ability to control the battlefield with unseen force. Strategist who employed their abilities to manage the battle's course and create an atmosphere that made traditional methods that are almost impossible for most fighters to use. This would have been an enormous challenge. But rather than viewing this obstacle as a constraint, the Swordmaster saw it as a chance to push the boundaries of his ability. His ability to adjust under pressure and maintain composure was crucial to his success in this match. His telekinetic opponent used erratic sword blows to try to frighten him and interfere with his moves. Keeping his focus, the master saw similarities in his opponent's abilities and took advantage of their over-reliance on deceit to lead them astray. No brute force nor technical assistance were used to win. However, his second match in the semifinal was just as intimidating because to his deep comprehension of time and control. This time, the fighter symbolized a culture that took pride in using plasma-based weapons against an adversary. prides itself on technological superiority, and its weapons were made to destroy fighters in close quarters, such as the Swordmaster's plasma blades, released a sphere of energy that could sever the majority of traditional materials, and the person wielding the sword was both competent and combative in this encounter. When Master realized that his typical strategies would not work, his ability to understand his opponent became paramount. Opposed such a weapon and modified his strategy appropriately. Instead of confronting his opponent's assault directly, used tactics of evasion and counterattacks to make his opponent expend energy. By generate openings, the battle demonstrated his belief that indirect attacks are sometimes the most effective. Conflict, but the capacity to take advantage of the vulnerabilities brought up by an adversary's arrogance. The effect of these victories went beyond the tournament's immediate context, and by this point the Swordmaster had earned the respect of clients. His journey was now viewed as a genuine challenge rather than a curiosity by people who had before disregarded him. For generations, the galaxy had adhered to the accepted norms of galactic combat, saw genetic engineering and technology as the best ways to succeed as a superior the Swordmaster, questioned these presumptions, demonstrating that skill, discipline, and flexibility could compete with even the most sophisticated systems. The shift in perspective extended beyond his rivals within fighting. There was a change in the audience. Those who had first kept an eye out of amusement or curiosity now observed his development with sincere interest in him. Fights were now viewed as examples of a timeless art form rather than as outliers. Commentators who had previously written him off as an underdog now took his tactics seriously. They made it possible for the most skilled competitors to participate in the tournament. The Swordmaster had evolved beyond a mere contestant. He served as a representation of a different strategy to counteract another noteworthy advancement at this time. The Master established connections with some of his vanquished opponents. They approached him with respect rather than hatred after being astonished by his talent and humility. Marked a little but significant shift in the tournament's dynamics. The Swordmaster wasn't only winning battles, he was changing how his rivals and the larger galactic community perceived battle and Earth's role in it. Although the newfound respect wasn't universal, many of the top players in the tournament thought that the Swordmaster's wins his achievement was perceived as a challenge to the supremacy of the most powerful people, who were still perceived as upsetting the natural order. Great civilizations, which led to conflict between those who thought they were invincible because of their superiority in order to regain equilibrium and confirm their sword-wielding dominance, challengers had to vanquish the Swordmaster. Despite these outside influences, the Master remained untouched, and his focus was constantly focused on the battle ahead, not on other people's opinions or the wider ramifications of his achievement. His ability to continue and progress in the tournament was largely due to his constant dedication to his craft, strengthened the expanding argument that his successes were due to the product rather than luck or environment. By the conclusion of the semifinals, the sword symbolizes a lifetime of discipline and mastery. Master had cemented his status as one of the most powerful contenders in the tournament. His trip had changed. The stage was transformed from an improbable tale of survival into a real threat to the galaxy's most formidable fighters. Planned for the last confrontation, a culmination of his attempts to demonstrate that Earth's techniques were timeless rather than antiquated. Because of their efficacy, this was no longer merely a struggle for life. Rather, it was a declaration that talent, discipline, and determination could overcome any obstacle. The top two teams, having each received 2 different worlds from all over the world at the last manifestation of the Earth Swordmaster against the defending champion, a legendary warrior. Due to their unparalleled supremacy in the competition, this opponent was the epitome of the extreme creation. such as the swordmaster who served the galaxy with no other weapon suitable for fair fighting. Just mention that. This opponent was the epicenter of the extreme principles that Galaxy held in high regard, which many believed was the swordmaster's doom. Beyond their physical prowess, Journey the champions were skilled strategists who utilized their enormous power and a thorough awareness of their opponent's vulnerabilities. Their arsenal combined the most cutting-edge technology, combined with physical improvements, made the fighter appear invincible, and their wins were quick. Their tactics were flawless, and their very existence terrified their opponents, so they weren't viewed as a threat. The court said that the ultimate purpose of the contest was to remove a candidate from competitive race. But since the outcome of the battle was predetermined, the swordmaster's approach was inevitable, was as methodical as it had been throughout the competition by the time of this last match, and his wins had proven how good his discipline and flexibility were. But the champion's challenge required furthermore. The adversary was not only more powerful and technologically sophisticated, but also had extensive expertise, and the champion's confidence in handling unusual fighters stemmed from their history of training champions. The swordmaster in this competition was his emphasis on principles, which allowed them to overcome every challenge that was put in their way. Instead, then focusing on specific tactics, his combat philosophy prioritized timing, accuracy, and the capacity to take advantage of every chance against a foe as strong as the champion. This idea was put to the test. Given its limitations, a direct conflict was not feasible due to the champion's power and technological superiority. Rather, the swordmaster depended on the basis of his training to stay calm under pressure while watching his two candidates. In addition to being a physical comfort as a front, the fight involved utilizing the opponent's habits and strengths against them. The winner of this philosophical contest symbolized the pinnacle of galactic warfare, where victories signified their style, which was characterized by the incorporation of technology and aesthetic upgrades, was one of overwhelming dominance. Opponents who are more accurate and powerful than the swordmaster, in contrast, symbolized the timeless worth of customs and the inventiveness of the human spirit via his triumph, were not intended to overwhelm his opponents, but rather to outsmart them by employing talent and flexibility to turning obstacles into opportunities. One of the crucial elements of the decisive conflict was the processes becoming more sophisticated. Because of the swordmaster's ability to stay surprising, the champion had probably carefully examined his prior fights, recognizing trends and vulnerabilities to take advantage of, but the swordmaster's versatility ensured that no two battles of Eshi were the same. His strategy was flexible, adapting to the particular difficulties. This uncertainty, which each opponent presented to the champion, turned into one of his greatest advantages, compelling another. Another important element was the opponent's ability to respond rather than control the course of the battle. Most opponents were scared by the champion's air of invincibility, which was produced by their dominance of the combat. The swordmaster was unfazed by this, even though the conflict had already started. Reputation. He approached the winner the same way he approached each of his opponents, as a task to be comprehended and conquered. Attitude enabled him to stay concentrated and withstand the psychological strain that had caused so many others to fail. The swordmaster's focus and discipline were clear throughout the fight. His decisions and moves were thoughtful. The swordmaster tried to create opportunities by taking advantage of the champion's calculated use of overwhelming force. Every interaction, whether it was overly committed or complacent, tested both intelligence and endurance. The swordmaster's victory in the tournament itself compelled the galaxy to reconsider its goals and presumptions regarding his experience in warfare. Their opinion came no less from the fact that he had trained the swordmaster to lead him in battles far beyond anything he had ever conquered so unsuccessfully by the way. This change in viewpoint had an impact that affected not just the tournament's competitors and spectators, but also the larger galactic society. The triumph served as a moment of redemption for the Earth's community and a proof that the planet, long denied because they had anything worthwhile to contribute, the Swordmaster's journey turned into a source of pride and inspiration, and a reminder of humanity's potential. His accomplishment was not only about personal success, but also about demonstrating that even in a galaxy where advanced civilizations predominate, tradition and inventiveness were both welcome. And the champion's loss also signaled a sea change in the perspective. The loss had nearly 80% of total Isaac's level, and the champion's loss also signaled a stage for the most developed civilizations to display their skills. For asserting their power, the Swordmaster's victory upended this story and established a new benchmark for detectives. His triumph was not just a personal achievement, but also a challenge to the notion of what it meant to be a great warrior. Status quo serves as a reminder that, following the last struggle, strength can manifest itself in a variety of ways. Master's impact went beyond the arena. His path became an inspirational representation of fortitude and flexibility. His accomplishments inspired many to reevaluate the importance of self-control and mastery in their own endeavors. Reminder that genuine strength came from a combination of skill, attention, and internal strength, rather than from external improvements. A steadfast commitment to one's values, the last conflict was more than just the Swordmaster's journey, was a contest that redefined what strength meant, but it was also a moment of transformation for the galaxy. Status quo serves as a reminder that, following the last struggle, strength can manifest itself in a variety of ways. Master's impact went beyond the arena. His path became an inspirational representation of fortitude and flexibility. His accomplishments inspired many to reevaluate the importance of self-control and mastery in their own endeavors. Reminder that genuine strength came from a combination of skill, attention, and internal strength, rather than from external improvements. A steadfast commitment to one's values, the last conflict was more than just the Swordmaster's journey, was a contest that redefined what strength meant, but it was also a moment of transformation for the galaxy. Exposing the continuing strength of the human spirit and contesting the domination of technology and augmentation for Earth, it served as confirmation and evidence that despite the galaxy's abundance of advanced civilizations, was a location for traditional skills and the timeless battle principles that the tournament's aftermath significantly altered perceptions throughout the galaxy. Deeply held beliefs about the nature of battle mastery had been called into question by the Swordmaster's victory. Given the place of custom in a world where technology rules, this victory was more than This was a turning point that changed its standing in the galactic community, gaining credibility where there had previously been despised. The initial effects were revolutionary, and Earth was long considered an insignificant player, ended up in the center of the galaxy's attention. Swordmaster's performance was viewed as a testament to tenacity and resourcefulness, enhancing Earth's standing in the trade. Opportunities for cooperation, diplomatic invitations, and alliances poured in toward the planet that was once a now a disenfranchised civilization, held a seat at the table and had its opinion heard when making decisions that shaped interstellar. First, cultural traditions. This newfound respect was not exclusive to the political and economic spheres. Long disregarded as archaic, the discipline's intensity and focus attracted interest from various cultures. The Swordmaster's artistic abilities previously aroused interest in Earth's traditional combat arts. Formerly thought to be remnants of a bygone period, were now recognized as advanced training methods that integrated mental and physical and spiritual growth. The Swordmaster's triumph had demonstrated the importance of these traditions, motivating others to investigate their possible uses. For the Swordmaster himself, and the results were a mixture of praise, and thus he rose to legendary status, and his name became a byword for fortitude, and invitations to mastery flooded in from all over the galaxy. with allied and imperial powers requesting his advice, but he insisted on being grounded and credited his accomplishments to the timeless values of discipline, flexibility, and humility, which further won him over many people and cemented his position as a revered leader outside of combat. And the effects of his triumph spread throughout the Galactic League community is questioning its long-standing focus on genetic and technical advancements as the main determinant. Societies that measured success had long dominated the competition. Strength through these developments and Master's triumph, the sword, upended this paradigm by compelling the reconsideration of the true meaning of combat superiority. And beyond, the way civilizations viewed their training and battle philosophies changed significantly as a result of this shift in perception. Realizing the importance of discipline, people started implementing aspects of Earth's traditions into their own systems. Emphasis and flexibility, admis, that previously only addressed technology integration, began providing instruction in conventional fighting techniques, stressing the value of learning the skill. The Swordmaster's impact could be seen in both the methods being taught and the underlying attitudes of individuals. The way the tournament was seen after he taught them about the ripple consequences of his triumph. Once seen as a platform for demonstrating biological and technological breakthroughs, it now carried a more subtle reputation. The Swordmaster's journey had shown that achievement wasn't just about power, but also about power. This change in Nar came with it the capacity to think, adapt, and invent under pressure. A fresh focus on the competition, encouraging competitors to view it as more than just a power struggle, but as a means of showcasing creativity and tenacity on Earth. The victory brought people together, and the Swordmaster's journey transformed into a source of pride that sparked a renewed interest in enrollment in martial arts schools that preserve and promote the planet's traditions. Has increased, and ancient fighting methods that were before disregarded as pertinent were examined with fresh regard. The notion that these techniques could rival or perhaps outperform the galaxy's most sophisticated approaches sparked a cultural renaissance as communities unite to commemorate and share their cultural heritage. This renewed interest. Beyond battle, the Swordmaster's accomplishments served as a reminder of the greater possibilities within Earth's defense. His journey was viewed as evidence of how traditions may spur innovation in fields like education and diplomacy, that humanity's distinct viewpoint, molded by its struggles and history, may provide insightful information in a leaders of the rapidly changing galaxy Earth understanding. The importance of this time tried to take advantage of the momentum by forming partnerships and encouraging cooperation that would guarantee the planet's position among the interstellar community. The champion's loss also significantly affected the competition's work ethic. For many, it was a moment of humility that forced them to reevaluate the best competitors and their civilizations. The Swordmaster's triumph brought to expose the boundaries of their reliance on technology and enhancement, significance of striking a balance between incorporating innovations and keeping in mind the core ideas that success. This insight caused the most potent civilizations in the galaxy to reflect, which resulted in changes to their instructional strategies and a stronger focus on flexibility and strategic thinking. The legacy of SWAT. Beyond the competition, Swordmaster's journey inspired people and communities with his achievement. Throughout the galaxy to question presumptions and accept the need of mastery and discipline for many of his actions. The narrative served as a reminder that strength was derived from both internal and external attributes. Resilience and the capacity to adjust to any situation are characteristics of a warrior. This message struck a chord with people from all walks of life, changing not only how people fight, but also how resilient people are. In the years that followed the competition, civilizations tackled problems in many facets of existence. As the galaxy developed further, the Swordmaster's victory had unlocked previously closed doorways, generating chances for cooperation and development. But the biggest shift was what had previously been seen the change in perception, both inside and outside of Earth. Once an archaic and obsolete culture was now acknowledged as a source of creativity and motivation. The Swordmaster's journey had shown that power wasn't about being the best, but rather about being brave enough to seek out and pursue. Had upended established hierarchies, compelling societies to reevaluate their presumptions of superiority and triumph. His impact went beyond battle, motivating a new generation of leaders. The ripple effects of his trip were felt by leaders, thinkers, and innovators who embraced the values he represented. In order to foster a more cohesive and cooperative galactic community through diplomacy, education, and culture, the Swordmaster's legacy was a monument to his path, which was not only about his triumphs, but also the lessons he left behind. It was a testament to the strength of discipline, flexibility, and the human spirit's ability to persevere in the face of hardship. Tale that struck a chord throughout the galaxy, encouraging people and societies to push themselves beyond their comfort zones and embrace the timeless values that define real power for both Earth and the galaxy.